The Fresno Focus Radio Hour. This is the No Focus Radio Hour. Comedy and insight from the greatest minds in Fresno. A Lightomine Media production. That's right. This is the No Focus Radio Hour, the #1 independent podcast in the Central Valley. Thank you for listening, and thank you for telling a friend. The No Focus Radio Hour is available anywhere podcasts can be found, including YouTube and your home smart speakers. Remember to subscribe and remember to leave a review. That truly does help others discover our show. And while you're reviewing, keep in mind that 5 stars is the only amount of stars you should use. If you enjoy our show, please share it with your friends. And if you hate it, share it with your enemies. Check out our site, nofocusradio.com, for exclusive content and to vote on Don's polls. Find us on social media. Our handle is at nofocusradio. Find the rest of our stuff at lightominemedia.com. I do miss singing. I miss singing. This is the No Focus Radio Hour. Like we said, the #1 independent podcast in the Central Valley. It's made for those who live in the Central Valley. It's made for those who miss the Central Valley, for those who long to live in the Central Valley, and for those who
are still looking for Stu Pedasso in the Central Valley.
He's still got diarrhea?
Something's going on with him.
Stewie.
Yikes.
Buddy's got to him.
We got to get him some, like, Cool Wipes or something.
Oh, some Cool Whip?
Put up in Cool Whip, yeah.
Cool Whip?
I bet you that would
Is
feel
that a thing?
amazing.
Eat enough of it. It'll stop you up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have with us, as always, our wonderful crew. We have Eric the Doorman.
Hey, Fresno, you got to vote. Vote on that. It's still up there on Don Schlicks polls. Vote about the singing. We still didn't sing this time. We're waiting to get all the votes in on that.
Right.
So
We want to know if
do
we
you
should
like
sing.
the singing or
If we
no?
should sing.
Okay.
We also have with us Mr. Don Schlicks.
Good to be back. We're in kind of like a rhythm here. It's our second show of the week, and it's been a while since we've done that.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad. I wish Marty was here. I miss him. I miss his musk. I miss watching him as he speaks. And
eating and writing down things during the show. I miss that.
I like looking at his drawings that he doodles after the show.
He does. Yeah. He's good.
Kind of like Johnny Depp at that trial. He was doing a lot of drawings.
Yeah, Johnny Depp. That's a really important news stuff that was really taking up our...
I have a tip for our listeners.
But first, let's go to the
Hi,
third.
guys. You might know me. My name is Max DeBoss. I also go by Johnny Knobs because I control the volume.
So we got rid of the singing, but we won't get rid of that joke?
No, that joke, because I'm telling you, people love that joke.
Who?
Yeah.
Which celebrity?
Well, I told you before, Ray Appleton, he said, I love the volume bit. And then also, friend of the show, Nathan Magsig, said, that's not how he sounds. He said, that's the only reason that I like the show.
That's the only reason I listen. He turns off after that.
Yeah.
He just shuts it off.
Yeah. That's true. So true stories.
I'm sorry. So what were you going to say, Don?
No, we were talking about Marty, and I just had a tip for our listeners.
Yeah.
That Marty is the funniest member of our podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
A lot of his jokes go unheard because we're talking and being idiots, and he'll just quietly, if you listen, be saying something
really
so funny.
Yeah.
So I like listening to our podcast because I don't hear him because I'm talking and laughing. And then when I listen back, I'm like, hey, what did Marty just say?
Yeah, he says some really funny stuff.
Yeah, that's why sometimes I'll be like, wait, what did you say, Marty? I'll play it back because I'm like, because we miss it. It's the same
I
thing.
would say like 90% of our show titles are little things that
Marty
says in the background.
That I never heard. Yeah.
Maybe that should be his new name, Marty, the show title. Pedasso, stupid asso.
Yeah, that is what it is. That's actually a good show title.
So how you guys been? What's going on? What's new?
Oh man, okay, let's start. Dawn.
Hey, you know what? Well, let me ask you first. How's daddy life going?
It's good.
Let's get an update on that.
It's really good. Baby's really great.
She's how old now?
She
13, 14?
Weeks?
Getting up there now. No, she's
they grow fast.
About 8 weeks at this point. 7, 8 weeks.
He actually, we asked him this yesterday. How old is baby now? It's hard to keep track when it's not your baby.
Yeah.
And he had it down to the days. That's how he reported it. She's blah 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 days old, and we're like, what? Days?
Yeah, that's actually how I track it.
Like,
wow.
Why not weeks or months at this point?
Yeah, she's actually 64 days.
Wow. Are you still going to be doing that when she's like 18? When she turns 18?
She's 2,000 days old.
She's 2,367.
I can't believe, though. It's a fast 64 days.
Yeah, it goes fast.
Yeah, it's quick, huh?
She'll be talking soon.
Oh, actually, 50. I made that wrong. It's 54 days. Now, but still, can't believe that.
It flies by. Now, do you guys, especially in this first time you're trying to get into a rhythm, it's just a blur. It's going to be a blur. You're going to think all these little moments you remember, like, oh, she did this or she did that. And it's just like it's all a blur when you get past it. It's amazing. Are you guys getting into a rhythm, speaking of that now? Are you kind of getting into a rhythm?
Yeah.
Or is it still chaos?
No, we're definitely finding somewhat of a rhythm.
Okay.
We kind of have a bit of a kind of a feeding type schedule, if you will. I'm back at work. So that's been interesting. Really tired during the work day. I'm drinking a lot of coffee. But yeah, for the most part, I think
how many hours of sleep do you think you're getting?
Yeah, my watch will tell me on average. I'll tell you right now. On average, here, I'll tell you what. My sleep average is, let's see here. Average sleep time is 4 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
So,
ouch.
You're running at half power.
Ouch.
Yeah. So
that's tough. What was your average?
You're like
before?
you're
probably like 6.5.
You're like a Nissan Leaf battery that's
2 years old.
2 years old.
Yeah. Soon enough, you're just gonna have to take me out to the desert and bury me. So.
Oh my gosh. But you guys are getting it. You're getting into a rhythm. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's been good.
I know some of our listeners were kind of, they're interested to find out. And I guess when we came back, we really didn't talk about how your life had changed.
Right.
Didn't get too much into dad stuff,
Yeah, no, we're good.
And,
it's been, it's normal. I think anybody who has kids knows what all the things that happen. So we're. But
it's kind of fun to listen to somebody else go through it.
I gotta admit, I was not a good dad when it came to middle of the night stuff. All three of our babies actually weren't too bad at, they didn't keep us up all night.
They'd sleep through the night mostly.
But babies do wake up during the night and want to eat.
Yeah.
And my wife obviously, unless we had bottles, then dads can feed. But Kristen was always up to the task of getting up and feeding a baby. And so I got lucky. One time, she started crying. And I was like, I got her. And I was stumbling down the hallway because I don't wake up good. And Chris is like, no, you're going to drop the baby.
Yeah.
Oh, no, really?
I guess, so we do a thing. So I'll do some of the night feedings as well with a bottle.
Okay.
But
do you have the little man boob?
I wear a big fake breast.
Unit? Yeah.
So, but we my wife and I, we both set our alarm just in case one of us sleeps through it. Just to make sure, because typically one of us will. So just
So you guys are feeding literally by the clock right now.
Kind of. Well, baby essentially feeds on the clock. Almost every 2 hours on the dot, she'll wake up and start screaming.
Okay.
So we try to get to it 5 minutes before that 2 hours, or else then you have to calm her down. So we try to do if we can get to her right before she starts screaming and we get a bottle or feeding her, then we're good.
Okay.
So when I'm either I'm feeding, then my wife is doing the pumping or anything like that. So we're trying to figure out this whole thing. But the other day, I guess it was the middle of the night. I didn't wake up to do a feeding, and so my wife came up to me. She said she woke me up and said, "Hey, can you?" Oh, that's right. I wasn't supposed to do that one. So she woke me up and said, "Hey, would you mind helping me out at this? This was the 3 o'clock feeding." I was like, and apparently I looked at her and said, "Yeah, but am I doing a normal feeding, or am I putting her in the? Am I sticking her in the?" My wife said, "Sticking her in the what?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't." I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. So I don't remember this, but apparently I was either going to feed her normally or sticking her into something.
Oh, that's dangerous.
What was I going to do? I don't know.
That's sleep deprivation right there. Yeah, that's hitting you hard.
So that's the new thing. Like, am I going to stick her in the thing? Or
we would usually tag team too. Like my wife breastfed, so she would usually breastfeed, and then I would get the job of taking her after and like burping her and doing that. And if my wife is the same way. She's not good unless she gets her sleep. So she's not. So I would usually be the one getting up, and like if she was real cranky, even though she just ate and she was still cranky, and then I would have to take her. And
the hard part is when they get a little bit older. You know, you have to wean them. They have to learn how to sleep through the night at some point, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a bit of letting them cry through it, and so they can realize, I guess I'm okay, and I can go back to sleep.
Right.
And so our second two babies were pretty good at that. Our first daughter was just, she had no quit in her. So she would pull herself up because she started walking at like 9 months or something, and just stand and scream and cry. And I would be like, no, we got to let her figure it out. And it would literally go on for like 2 hours.
Oh,
right.
And we'd just be laying there listening to her scream.
It's like a battle of the wills.
Like, she's not going to give up.
Right?
She's not going to give up. It's like,
that's
so
hard.
There's been a couple times where baby Gwen won't stop screaming at night for either colicky or whatever. The good news is that like these days noise canceling headphones are like really good. And so now I just like shove my headphones in, crank up the noise canceling, and just have something playing, because it's just like, or else I'm gonna like lose my mind because it's just screaming in your face.
Oh yeah.
For hours.
I've done that. Yeah, I've lost my mind a couple times. I'd be walking her around at night, middle of the night, and she's just whatever, couldn't be consoled, and just like, okay, so I'm just walking around, bouncing her, and Now, let me ask you this. Your daughter, this is your oldest daughter you were talking about, right? Now, your oldest daughter, is she still very headstrong? Is she still have that same personality trait, would you say?
She's not as... I wouldn't call her stubborn. No, actually, my son is the most probably stubborn now. Yeah, but he was... he wasn't a difficult baby. He had, like... He spit up a lot.
Okay.
And so that kind of sucked. He was our only baby that spit up a lot. But he was pretty happy in general. He didn't cry and scream too often. So no, she's not. I wouldn't call her.
Okay,
stubborn.
I was wondering if that was like a characteristic that was just carried through her personality. Yeah, where she was just that way. Interesting.
I just think she.
She's like, you're new parents. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Get in here.
Yeah, she just wasn't going to give up.
That's funny. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting into the dad groove there.
Thank you.
Like we told you, life is never the same.
Never the same.
Yeah,
but it's good.
So.
Yeah. How about what's new? What's new, guys? Since last we spoke.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I just avoid McDonald's. That's all I know.
I'm trying the acai grape water.
How is that?
It's called Splash. So Eric and I opened it because you told me it's.
I do not like it.
He doesn't like it. I opened it. I took a little sniff.
Yeah.
And I let Eric sniff. We both agree.
Yeah.
It smells exactly like Otter Pops.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I thought it tasted exactly like Big League Chew.
Okay.
What? Big League Chew?
Yeah, great.
It's more Otter Poppy, but I could see that.
Yeah. Great big. It's like drinking Big League Chew.
Oh, that sounds kind of fun, actually.
Yeah. I actually like it.
Do you?
But it is very candy-ish.
Yeah. It's interesting. So like it's the whole flavor watered thing, the hints, the everything. Well, this company is like big advertising now. And I think the idea is to turn water into like a hip, cool drink,
like soda,
for like maybe young people or like definitely like people from the '90s, based on the.
It reminds me of what were those bottles? Squirt,
like
not
Squeeze-Its.
Squeeze-Its.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Squeeze-Its.
It's interesting. So, but yeah, for me, that fake sugar taste is really pungent.
Well, so is that what are they putting fake sugar in this?
There's a bit of aspartame in there. That's what you taste. That's what you taste. Yeah.
But that's supposed to be. I've heard the body reacts to it just like it's real sugar in some ways.
In some ways, but not in real life.
And that stuff make you blind?
No, there's a lot of fake stuff about it. I mean, look, anything, if you have enough of anything, it'll kill you, including water, right?
Yeah.
So for the most part, you'll be all right.
A flavored water, that's a big thing now. People love that flavored water. There's a ton of it.
So we got this. I was ordering some flavored waters, and we saw it. It was like on Walmart.com because I got I'm on T-Mobile customer. They just for some random reason gave me a bunch of free months of Walmart Plus.
Oh, okay.
Which means I can just get groceries delivered at any time in 2 hours for free.
That's
so
dangerous.
I was like, sweet. So I wanted some flavored water, and this kept on being advertised big time, and it was like. Compared to like Hints, which are like $1.25 a bottle.
So expensive.
This was like 25 cents a bottle. And I was like, you know what? Sure, let's buy a big pack of it. Maybe it's good. Anyways, it's not great. So
yeah.
Well, I actually like it, but it does not quench your thirst.
No.
As soon as you're done drinking, you're thirsty again.
Well, yeah, it's like almost like drinking a soda, right?
Yeah.
It's like sugar. My wife loves that bubbly stuff I cannot. I drink that and I go, oh my gosh.
My wife loves the Costco brand sparkling water.
Okay.
Which I don't. I'm not a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
The best one I've had was a new flavor of LaCroix.
Oh, yeah.
Is that it?
LaCroix. Yeah.
And I'm going to forget. Dang it. It was like a raspberry something mixed. And it was so good. We all loved it. But, yeah. I don't know. I think kids would, like you said, Max, this would be something kids would like. You could send them in their lunch and they'd be like, ooh,
right.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that's what it is. And honestly, it's this funny little brand. Website's very, it's very much like we're from it just looks very 90s.
Yeah.
It's from this company. It's very nondescript. They don't want you to know who they are. It's by Blue Triton Brands. But those in the know, if you're in the know in the food world,
okay.
Blue Triton Brands is Nestle. So it's a Nestle company.
Nestle's one of those companies that owns all the dog food, owns everything. Yeah.
So they got a whole bunch of flavors. Lemon, mandarin, pineapple, watermelon, acai grape. They're really pushing this. I think they're trying to make a really hip water for like young people, which is smart.
Well, they do that, right? These companies will do, even like Coke, they do the different flavors of Coke and they do all this stuff just to promote. It's just promotion, try to get out there, see if it hits. And if it hits, great. And if it doesn't, well, they go on to the next thing, So
yeah, pretty interesting.
Well, I think we should talk about some real fun stuff, which Dawn was going to lead us into.
Yeah, we were just talking about babies and all that stuff. So, sometimes the government likes to baby us.
Yeah.
Nice transition.
What were you going to talk about, Don?
So I'm reading a book, and I swear that I feel like I've done this on this show already, but Max and Eric claim that I didn't do it. So if I'm right and they're wrong, I apologize if you've heard this for the second time. But this book is excellent. It's by Dr. David Jeremiah, and he's an expert on biblical studies, and he really focuses on biblical prophecy, okay? But this book, I really believe anybody would find it interesting. I don't think you have to have believe in, Jesus Christ to necessarily get a lot out of this book. So, but what the basis of it is, it's called Where Do We Go From Here? And his whole thing, he starts off explaining, just like the rest of us, he was sitting in his kitchen eating breakfast with his wife early in 2020, and he was seeing all the chaos going on, and we were going through political turmoil, economic turmoil, health crisis, racial turmoil, and he just said to his wife, I think we're looking at the end of America, like a lot of us have said. Yeah. And so instead of getting depressed about it, he really dove in to what he knows about biblical prophecy. And so he identified 10 biblical prophecies that he sees playing out. And it's interesting. So he talks about socialism, and we're not going to go through all of this, but socialism, globalism, pandemic, and plagues. And these are all, he has references to the Bible talking about the end times. Will feature all of this. Economic chaos, people leaving the church, leaving their faith. Cancel culture is actually prophesied in the Bible, and so I'm just kind of starting. I've read the socialism, globalism, and pandemic, which we've all experienced and are experiencing. So I just wanted to quickly cover some of the things I found interesting about socialism, just in case. I just think so many Americans at this point view socialism as either neutral or even a positive. And he has a statistic saying that 40% of Americans overall view socialism as a positive, but if you look at the ages of 18 to 24, 61% of those Americans view socialism as a positive. And so he talks about socialism and ties it back to biblical prophecy, but the stuff that's in there, you don't, again, have to even believe the Bible is real for some of, a lot of this. So I just want to go through, I've highlighted a couple things. He starts off talking about Venezuela, just as a reference. Okay. And Venezuela in the 80s and 90s was the richest, wealthiest nation in South America. The per capita income was almost the same income as the United States. Wow. It was greater than China, Japan. People there it was very much similar experience to America in the 80s and 90s. The capita per person, GDP, people were not impoverished. They had freedoms that the American Constitution has embedded, such as religious liberty, political freedom, personal dignity, economic opportunity. This is Venezuela, a good place to live. Then in 1998, people elected Hugo Chavez, we've seen people in America wearing Hugo Chavez shirts, right? He was a popular figure in Hollywood, and stars like Sean Penn and Oliver Stone and Michael Moore all championed him. So he kind of goes on to list what Hugo Chavez did as he took power. I just want to kind of highlight some of these things. So in 1998, when he took power, Chavez implemented the socialist paybook formula that was formulated by the Soviet Union, Cuba, China, and other nations. So his first task was to rewrite the Venezuelan constitution. He spun it as a good thing. He guaranteed citizens the so-called free rights of government-provided health care, college education, and social justice. And the Supreme Court of Venezuela ruled against many of his important issues that he was trying to push. They're like, this is not constitutional. And so what did he do? He stacked the courts with 12 justices who were loyal to him.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. And then socialism engulfed the country, obviously. He was reelected in 2006, and he was fully in control of the courts and the legislature. So his next move was nationalize the media and removed any voices of dissent. So the media was then controlled by, obviously, the government, as it is in Canada and other socialist nations around the world, Cuba, China, Russia, United States, seemingly. And then he authorized government agencies to seize all privately owned wealth and property from Venezuelan citizens, all in the name of fairness and equality. He took over the nation's oil industry, nationalized power companies, farms, banks, grocery stores. And then his final step, he eliminated term limits for elected officials, setting himself up to rule for the rest of his life. And he died in 2013 of cancer. Unfortunately, his predecessor was then elected, Maduro, who's running things. And so what does this tie into? So Hugo Chavez, again, we talked about, he was plenty popular in the United States, and his ideas are popular now with young people. Bernie Sanders has openly declared himself a socialist, pushing that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's a socialist, and she has stated this, that her goals are to end capitalism and implement the same socialist agenda that was executed in Venezuela. So that seems promising. So what is socialism? People might just think of it as benign, alternate way of managing a country. So the World Socialist Party of the United States, this is their definition. It's the establishment of a system of society based on the common ownership and democratic control of the means and instruments of producing and distributing wealth by and in interest of society as a whole, not individuals. We call this common ownership, but other terms we regard synonymous, communism and socialism. So they believe that the resources, natural energy, farms, factories, medicines, everything should be under the control of the people. That sounds good. Yeah. But what does the people mean? Could there ever really be a way for me, all my neighbors to have a say in everything? Yeah. No. So when they say the people, they mean government, right? Yeah. That's exactly what they mean. The people is government. It's the sole authority and controls all the means of production. Unfortunately, governments, I talked about this last podcast, many people that get into government, they're the type of people who seek out power.
Sure.
And they're people. Socialism they attack capitalism by saying it's full of greed, it's full of whatever. So is socialism. It just limits the availability of other people to benefit, right? And so all those people, head of the government, they get all the power, but they're still corruptible by greed, selfishness, right? Authority. They want more authority. And so the more power it flows, like you said, it gets consolidated and pushed up to the head of a handful of these elite government officials who basically become dictatorial, right?
Yep.
And so he has stories of people who lived in these nations that escaped to the United States. A woman, Chinese woman, Xi Van Fleet, she lived through communist China, and she says she was on a Virginia school board, and she stood up to vocalize her concerns about what's happening in schools. And she says, there's a lot of similarities between what happened in China during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, which, remember, was when the government murdered millions of...
Is that when they brought in Mao?
They brought in Mao, and then Mao murdered all the doctors,
all the dissidents,
educated all the people and people who didn't agree with him. She says there's a lot of similarities between that and what is happening in the United States right now. She said they use the same ideology, the same methodology, even the same vocabulary. And with the same goal. The ideology is cultural Marxism, and we were divided into groups as oppressor and oppressed. Oh, that sounds familiar, right? You're privileged, you're an oppressor.
A little critical race theory there.
Yeah. And then she says, and the takeout methodology is also very similar. It's cancel culture. We basically canceled the whole Chinese civilization pre-communism. So they erased the past, right? And so that was interesting, because what have we been seeing? We've been seeing removal of monuments, rewriting of our history, the elimination of what America was, right? It was bad. We need to replace it with what it is now. We're getting rid of certain parts of our textbooks and what we teach children, right? She said that all took place in China. Then he goes into Karl Marx, who I didn't know much about. I knew he wrote the Communist Manifesto, and he was the birth of this idea of basically division between people, oppressors and the oppressed.
Right.
Marxist theory. And it's one of the 3 or 4 main theories of sociology that people believe in. So this is Karl Marx. His family believed him to be possessed by a demon. He wrote, this is his poem. In 1837, he wrote a poem called The Pale Maiden. And he wrote these words about himself. Thus heaven I have forfeited. I know full well. My soul, once true to God, is chosen for hell. Then a few years later, in 1841, he wrote this poem. Look now, my blood-dark sword shall stab unerringly within thy soul. The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain, till I go mad and my heart is utterly changed. See the sword, the prince of darkness sold it to me, for he beats the time and gives the signs. Ever more boldly I play the dance of death. That's his own words. That's not something made up. And so,
well, I think I heard that in Chicken Soup for the Soul too.
Yeah, the bathroom reader. That's good. Those bathroom reader books.
Yeah, it's really uplifting.
Yeah.
Right? It's uplifting stuff.
And so what happened to Karl Marx? He led a life. He mooched off of everyone. He never had a job in his whole life.
Oh, a lot of politicians. Like that.
Mooched off his parents, his friends, and anyone else he could find. His wife, Jenny, was her name. She was so miserable in their marriage, she wanted to die. And his daughters, Jenna and Laura, actually did kill themselves. Jenny poisoned herself when she was 43. And in a death pact with her husband, Laura committed suicide when she was 66. So interesting. That's the founder and father of socialism.
Yeah.
Marxism, then he was anti-God, right? And so this is an interesting point. Whether you believe in God or not, you must see this to be true. Communism can only succeed if loyalty to the church has been replaced with loyalty to the state. Marx described the church as medieval mildew, which must be scraped away. And other socialist leaders, from China to Stalin to Castro to Pol Pot, they saw organized religion as the enemy. A scholar noted, religion is the enemy, a rival to Marxist mind control, and it has to be vanquished regardless of the costs and difficulty. Soviet Union had a big slogan that they said a lot: let us drive out the capitalists from earth and God from heaven. So one thing they did when Stalin took over is they attacked the Russian Orthodox Church by terror and murdered many priests, and others were denied their civil rights and experienced economic depression. Marxism is totalitarian. That was first used, that word, to describe fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, who described what it means to be a totalitarian: everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. Right? And so what does that take to implement that belief? Everything for the good of the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, including thoughts or speech or anything, right? It takes total control of ideology, right? And so that goes to religion, because people devise their ideology from religion. He also talks about how Marxism actively seeks to destroy the family. What we've been hearing. Yeah. Because when people have a strong family, they get value and support from each other. And so what Marxism did, you always hear about how, you do hear about this, Stalin was actually very progressive and pro-women. Women started working in the Soviet Union before they did in the United States. Well, it was a plan to break up houses, the family. Yeah. And so that's, he talks about that in here. Marxism is divisive. In the past, Marxism used classes, right? The division of classes, the oppressors against the oppressed, right? Hugo Chavez and men like that have gone out of their way to ensure that the poor hated the wealthy. Yeah. Right? But today it's more cultural Marxism, and it exploits the divide, which is often racial, sexual, or gender related. We talked about how all of a sudden everything's racist, right? Well, that's a push of socialism. When you can't figure out how to respond to an issue, everything is racist. We're dividing people into oppressed and oppressors, right? That's what's happening right now. Not so much on economics as it is now on cultural, racial identity, sexual identity, right? And it's easy to see that that's happening. Marxism is deadly. This is the part that jumped out to me, and I hope you do your own research. He researched this. 1999, the Black Book of Communism attempted to calculate the Marxist/Leninist death toll for the 20th century. So if I had you guess how many people were murdered by their own government, socialist governments, in places like China, USSR, Cambodia, African socialist nations, Latin American socialist nations, places like Vietnam, North Korea, and we're only going from 1917 to 1979. What would your guess be of the people murdered by their socialist government? Not by war. These are not people that were, soldiers killed other people in another country because they were at war. These are citizens who were killed by their own government.
Yeah,
these were all socialist.
War of ideology, actually.
For the benefit of the all, and I think I actually know this, so I don't know.
Okay, go ahead. Go
100 million.
Yeah. Well, technically, you're off by a little bit. 90. Well, he
Are
thinks.
you talking all those countries combined, or?
Yes. Okay, so all the socialists, well, not even all of them. They looked at specifically Latin America, Eastern Europe, Vietnam, Africa,
and that's
Cambodia.
Just within 100 years, right, since this idea.
Oh, no, that was from 1917 to 1979.
Oh, not even 100 years.
No.
Oh, gotcha.
93 million deaths, best they could calculate. That is more than double the total deaths of World War I and World War II. You'd have to double that.
Something about the Black Book of Socialism, I don't know if he mentioned it. That wasn't done by some Christian conservative deal. That was a study done by Harvard University. Is who did that painstakingly, tons of researchers through Harvard. So it's
wow. Now we want to ignore that, of course. So it's a deadly ideology that killed almost 100 million people in that time span in the 1900s. And it's being championed again.
Well, I was going to say, does he also kind of explain, like, with this country, that's the thing, right? I mean, does this country had maybe too long riches for too
prosperity?
long and prosperity, and then there's kind of a natural
especially
shift.
This young generation.
Yeah.
They haven't experienced any hardships.
Well,
they haven't go to fight a war. They haven't done anything that was remotely scary, or they didn't see evil attacking.
Been through a depression. I mean, a real serious depression.
Right.
Or been through. Yeah. I mean, even my generation. I would
and
say
the most. Where did this start? It started with the elites. And who benefits in socialism? Only the elites. So the first thing they did was infiltrate higher education, academia.
Yeah.
And then eventually, Max, I remember you going to Fresno State and you told me all this about a professor that was teaching you. And I was like, what? How does this guy believe that? This guy must be crazy. And all of a sudden, everybody in every college believed that. And now it's in our high school, elementary, and primary schools.
Elementary, they're attacking elementary schools. Yes, down to that level.
This chapter goes on to show you in what ways we're erasing our past. Right, we've destructed monuments, cancel culture. It's not just status and histories that are being torn down. It's also anyone who doesn't kneel at the altar of the prevailing political passions. You are canceled, and we've seen that. This is a quote from, I can't find his first name, Dreher. But today in our societies, dissenters find their businesses, careers, and reputations destroyed. They are pushed out of the public square, stigmatized, canceled, and demonized as racist, sexist, homophobes, and the like. And they are afraid to resist because they are confident no one will join them or defend them. He goes on to contrast that with the First Amendment, which states that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof of religion, abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble, petition the government for a redress of grievances. Well, all of those things now are being seen as dangerous, right? We can't have free speech. People say mean and hurtful things. Religion, we have to change what your religion believes because it's hateful or homophobic, or right. The next thing he talks about, dismantling of the nuclear family, which we touched on a little bit. He says Marxism, the family is perceived as a unit in which wives are suppressed. That's what they preach. They're suppressed by their husbands and children, and they're suppressed by their parents. So the cultures of repression must be broken up. Mothers have to leave their homes and join the workforce. I'm not against moms working. If you want to work and you're a mom, God bless you. That's your right. If you want to stay home, however, and be a mom at home and raise your kids, that should be your right. You shouldn't be told that you're being oppressed, right? If you want to do that. And then socialists know that as long as the family remains strong, socialism cannot flourish. So there's an ongoing attempt to subjugate the home to the government. Talks about redistribution of wealth. That's a hot topic right now. But he says if you study socialism, in every single case it's been implemented, the poor have gotten poorer. And the few elites who have been assigned to redistribute this wealth have become filthy rich. It's proven over and over again.
Especially during the pandemic, the COVID time. I mean, there was a huge disparity.
Who got wealthy? The wealthy.
Boosted. I mean, they're saying it by leaps and bounds.
Yeah. And he says that you can, these are studies after studies. In socialist nations, the poor do much worse than they do in capitalistic societies. So they point out capitalism. Look, we have all these poor people. It's not fair. Then they institute socialism, and it gets worse for everyone. He talks about defunding the police. Socialists are keen on keeping the reins of law enforcement in their control.
Sure.
And we've seen that here, right? Defund the police, eliminate police things. So he goes into how we can live in a socialistic world. And he ties all this back to biblical prophecy. I'm not going into that, but if you want to read this book, which I highly recommend, again, you can look at all the ways that Scripture prophesied these events happening, which is pretty interesting.
How to live as a religious person, or what?
Anybody.
In a socialistic world?
If you are just like wow, I don't think socialism is a good idea. Yeah. What can we do? He says, refuse to live by lies. Don't bow down to the lies. Speak out. Follow the truth. Don't just say you believe in something, but actually stand up and follow it. He says small groups are important. Instead of being divided, be united with people and not divisive, and resist any way you can. And he's got people who lived in a socialist world and then regretted, like, I never stood up and said this was wrong, or, I was scared, I got canceled or whatever, right? And then he comes back to Venezuela, which I think, again, makes a stark contrast how it was one of the wealthiest nations in the Americas, and then today. 96% of citizens live below the poverty line. Most people earn less than a U.S. dollar every day. That's in Venezuela, one of the wealthiest nations and this is less than 20 years after, 20-something years after socialism was instituted there. He said the price of toilet paper in Venezuela costs 2.6 million bolivars, which is like their dollar, for a roll of toilet paper. 2.6 million because of inflation. Refugees have been fleeing. 5.5 million have fled. And this was as of 2014. We know it's continued. So in short, a country once defined by freedom and opportunity is now oppressed, barren, and hopeless. That is the fruit of a Marxist revolution. And then he says, look, no form of government on earth is perfect. There are flaws in capitalism. You can point out things that are, unequal and unfair. Yeah. Every political philosophy is defective, including democracy and the free market system. But some ideas are worse than others. Marxism is one of the worst ideas ever conceived. Just ask the oppressed multitudes and its countless casualties. We should be aware of its history, herald its dangers, and oppose its spread.
Interesting. It's funny, when you're talking about this, everything that you have talked about right now, we have talked about on this show.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's happening. That's why I brought it up.
Thing. Yeah. And here's the other thing that kind of came to mind when you were talking about, one of the differences I see, besides the obvious differences, though, between capitalism and between socialism is checks and balances. With capitalism, you have checks and balances, where people they don't get out of control, because people are people. There's greedy people. There's people that when they get power, they don't want to let it go. With socialism, that doesn't happen. It doesn't give you those checks and balances. So those are the two systems. The other thing I would want to ask you is that, does he also say in Venezuela, did they have like a Second Amendment right? Do they have arms? In other words, could the people, once this
defend
flipped in the government,
that's something I don't know. He doesn't talk about if they took the guns away, but we do know in Germany and Russia, in Cuba, they disarmed their citizens. Right, the guns are dangerous. They're deadly. We want to keep you safer by getting rid of your arms. Then when the government comes in and does anything to you, you can't defend yourself. You're defenseless.
And that's the big thing. People think that the Second Amendment is just there because, just Americans love guns. They just love guns and wanted to have guns. No, the Founding Fathers, what?
I was going to say, you've wanted an answer. They did not have a Second Amendment, but in 2012, Venezuela implemented strong gun control policies.
There you go. And so here's the deal. The Second Amendment, is there because I was listening to someone talk about this. This gives us the difference when the federal government gets out of control.
Like the king did. They were scared. They lived under the authoritarian rule of a king. Yes. We're talking about the colonists. Yeah, and the people that came over to live in the colonies. So when they said, we're not living under a king, and we don't want the federal government to have that much power over the people.
Yes.
One of the things they did was to help protect the people from governmental takeover and power was implement the Second Amendment.
Well, that's what is there. It's an equalization of power. So in other words, you can't get out of control. And that's the thing. Socialism is a system set up, obviously.
Take all power away from people and give government all power.
And at the same time telling people that they're giving you all the power.
Right.
It's this double speak, and action.
They do exactly the opposite of what they tell you.
Say, exactly, yeah. So, very interesting book, man.
I highly recommend it. Where do we go from here? He's a great author. He has many best-selling books. Again, a lot of it on prophecy, but not all of it. And
the other
very smart. And all these things I just read to you, he cites them, so he's not making this up. Yeah. The last 50 pages of this books are where he got these from. The articles, the information. Yeah, look at this. It's a ton of notes and bibliographies and everything about it. So. But that's socialism. I just wanted to share that. Okay.
See, people don't understand that. They think that, especially now, if we get on the religious side of this, people think, oh, the old religious tropes, right? But the problem is that they don't understand they're trading one religion for another. Yeah. I mean, socialism is a religion.
It's a
progressive leftism
hardcore
is a religion. Yeah,
yeah.
It's all a religion, and depends on if you want to buy into that ideology. So yeah, and I think at this point it's going to be up to people in this country
to push back. I just read Canada was trying to get rid of their citizens to have handguns.
They just passed the law.
Did.
They just passed the law.
I thought they tabled it,
Trudeau.
but did it go through?
Did they table it?
Well, Trudeau's a famous socialist. He loved Fidel Castro.
Oh, yeah.
He was
Trudeau right now used the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, to tell his citizens that immediately he's going to stop all sales of handguns. You can't get a handgun at this point. So I don't know what that has to do with Texas.
Well, he's saving his people from
here's the funny thing.
Violence. Yeah.
The more people that have guns, right? They've proven it's not the amount of guns you have that cause these things, right? There were more guns. I think more citizens had guns in their homes back in the days before these shootings started happening.
Yeah.
It would actually be safer. What happened? Well, the kids died and they perished, and obviously there's a lot of crazy things coming out with that. I'm getting off on the gun thing, but the point being is that is the great equalizer, really, for this. The only thing the citizens can do when you have
fight
an
back if you have a government coming. But notice what Venezuela did. He got elected by promising the same things we're fighting for right now: social justice, equality, all that stuff. That's what he promised. Free healthcare, free education. Those were the things that he promised. We're talking about Chavez to get elected.
Yes.
In Venezuela, same thing that we're hearing from Bernie and AOC, right? The same things that they're promising. So they get voted into power, and then they implement these things. And then, oh no, the Supreme Court pushes back. This is not constitutional. He stacks the court. So then he has Supreme Court in his pocket. He's got the legislators in his pocket.
And well, look what's happening
and then
right
when
now.
he gets elected again, he can pass a law that says lifetime. There's no term limits. I can be
so he's a dictator.
Yeah,
at that
just
point.
become a dictator.
Well, look what's happening right now. The Democrats, right, are talking about stacking. They're actually going to expand Supreme Court so that they can get things done. Doesn't that? I mean, that's right.
They're doing the playbook. That's what he said right on the beginning of this chapter.
Exact playbook.
They're implementing the socialist playbook.
Listen,
was invented by Marx.
On a whole, if you look at the idealism of it, it sounds great, and it would be nice to be able to have that utopia. Unfortunately, the one glitch in that matrix is man, right, or woman. I mean, humankind, right? Because people, like you say, they get power, they get greedy, and it always goes this way. Every time, it always goes off the rails.
Right. If you want to not lose all your freedom and be controlled by a government, you need to spread out power instead of giving all power to somebody who promises that they will take all the power and all the things and spread it equally. They never do. They do. No. Everyone becomes dirt poor, as it's happened in every country that's had it, except for who? The very elite, the very wealthy, and the people who control the government.
Yes. I mean, how many times have these people, these elites we have, these governmental elites, been caught during the pandemic doing stuff they weren't supposed to be doing, right? They're mask off.
Going out to
Everybody
dinner.
else has to have a mask, and their mask. They're doing everything.
But remember the mayor of Los Angeles who's holding his breath during the Super Bowl.
Oh, he's holding his breath, yeah. Or remember the one, who was that? Was that in San Francisco, the one that was just...
It was Tony,
guys. It was a concert.
Come on.
What do? You get moved by the spirit, and you just do it.
Unreal.
But again, that was my quick book. That was just a review of chapter 1. Chapter 1 of where do we go from here. I'm not going to do another chapter, but again, they're very interesting. The Bible prophecy of globalism. I will say one thing. He says that the Bible does say, Jesus said, in the end times, you will hear rumors of war. The pandemics are brought up many times in the Bible. And he says, how does that feed into globalism? Well, we already live in a world where it's not hard to imagine it could be ruled by one leader, right? I mean, we're so connected now. One person from a high priority can rule the world in one government.
The technology
allows
we have
it
now
to happen.
Yes.
Makes
it easy.
He says something like the COVID. we became much more willing to give power to the government to help us survive these pandemics. He's like,
Yes.
Imagine a pandemic that's 5 times worse than COVID. The nations are already working together. We have a global economy.
Well, the WHO.
They're working to solve climate control, and these pandemics now are just going to want people to give more of their power away to keep them safe.
I think it got shot down, but the World Health Organization, right, just came out where they were trying to do this thing where all basically the countries would give them the power in a pandemic for them to make the call. So that's what you do. You have these outside people that aren't elected,
right,
and these bureaucrats in these positions that now all of a sudden are given all this power that follow whatever global plan is being
And he
set
points
forth.
out that is the final prophecy in the Bible of the rise of the one global leader known as the Antichrist. There'll be one global leader that the world accepts to rule everybody.
Yeah.
Good news is, if you believe in the Bible, good news is the very next prophecy is the return of Christ and the destruction of that one global ruler, and then Christ will rule.
But if you don't believe in it, good luck.
You're on your own.
You're on your own, Dave. But Jeremiah points out that he used to believe that the end times weren't going to be in his lifetime, right? He's like, people have been talking about end times for so
My whole
long.
lifetime.
Christopher Columbus thought he was living in the end times. Was a big. So did the disciples right after Jesus left. These are the end times. But he says all the prophecies of the Bible have been fulfilled except for that last one of the rise of the global, basically the Antichrist. He won't be Satan. He will be a man, but it will be a man who is given all power. And he says, that's not hard to imagine anymore, right?
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, too. I wonder if, these end times, so we're talking about end times, I wonder if that is really, my thought is that left up to the people? And what I mean by that is that, depending on how we react to all of this stuff, I mean, America especially is probably the last bastion of any type of hope of freedoms.
Yeah.
And if we give in, then yes, it's probably going to become an end times,
Well, that's what the point
but
of this.
If we can hold it off a little bit longer,
we can,
and try to enjoy.
If we reject this socialism and embrace democracy and freedom, we have a chance to hopefully make it through. But we're closer and closer, to this. It's not something that you can't imagine anymore, right? One world government, one world leader.
Well, it's interesting because everything, like I said before earlier, everything in that book we have talked about, at this show. I mean, you can go to our past shows and you can listen to all this stuff that we've hit on, so there's a lot of like minds out there. Everybody is seeing. There are a lot of people that are seeing this.
Right.
This isn't just we're getting taken over. We're blinded to this, but it's up to us. Hey, Max, I know real quick before we go because we're running out of time here too. Kind of along this lines, you had an entertainment pick, and I was very interested. You said you watched this movie, and I was very interested. I want to see it.
Yeah.
It is called, what is it called?
Yeah, so it's a documentary. This was made by the crew at the Daily Wire. The well-known bigot Matt Walsh had done this documentary. But honestly, I would say I know a lot of people might be listening and saying, "Oh, okay, Max, here you go. You hate, trans people and everything," and I really don't.
No.
I have literally zero problems with anybody and their sexuality and how they live. What I do have an issue with, though, and this documentary does a really great job, is of showing is a world where doctors and we reject the science that shows that most children, once you're an adult, I don't care what you do. It really has to do with children. And the real giant push to allow children, before they are able to really make decisions about this, to actually have life-altering surgeries that will and honestly, here's the thing. They may not regret it, but what if they do? There's no way to go back. And there's a lot of evidence that shows that people who have these surgeries under a certain age, within 6 or 7 years, it's actually the number one group I guess
Suicide.
number one group of suicide rates.
Really?
12 times higher than any other group.
Yeah, and it's specifically and keep in mind, people say that a lot of people who are trans or different things, it's because they're not welcome in their world. However, it's not the same for people who don't even have the surgeries, right? So if you live your life, for instance, as a woman, but you haven't had like the full surgery or all the hormones and stuff, then your risks of suicide aren't nearly as high. So there's just a lot of evidence of just like, look, if we can just allow people to get to the age of 18 before they make the decision, just let us do that, please. So this documentary is really
for surgery.
For surgery,
right? You're not even talking about, hey, you have a son, he likes to wear a dress.
I'm not even talking that. I'm talking hormones and surgery.
Life changing, life altering.
Yeah, they go through a lot of real evidence, and you can find it all. I can post it in the show notes. It's the hormones that we start kids on at this age if they want. It's like a Luprin, right? It's the hormone puberty blocker.
Yeah.
There'll be people who say, look, it's fine. It just stops it. Then as soon as you're off the medicine, then you just get right back into things. But that's what they keep on telling us. But the truth is, the actual people who make the medicine, they invented this to chemically castrate people. It's what it's used for. And they themselves have studies that show that if you're on this for 10 years, you have a significant, like almost guaranteed rate of getting cancer. So there is a lot of stuff, and we just kind of are ignoring it. So what this documentary does, he goes through this, and he just kind of goes and talks to people, and his main thing is, he goes through a lot of stuff, but his main question is what is a woman? And it's really interesting, because he points out that that's a really hard question for people to answer now. So they'll say, well, it's whatever somebody wants to be. Whoever, if they want to identify as a woman, they can be. And he says, okay, well, what are they identifying as? And they'll say, a woman. Okay, what is that?
What is a
woman?
woman?
He can't get the answer. And, he goes to, he's at universities, doctors, politicians.
At marches.
But the scary one are these huge doctors, like some of the leading doctors in this field. They will not answer. Or university professors, like the head of gender identity studies or ideology studies. He says the thing that you'll get a lot of is people saying, well, why do you want to know? And he's like, I just want to know like some subjective truth.
Yeah.
And people will lose their minds, and they're like, why are you using the hateful word? And he's like, wait, what word? They're like, truth. So people literally will start losing their minds.
That is crazy.
He goes through a lot of the issues in schools, how they're teaching this. And once again, it's not, I want people to understand, there's a lot of hate towards somebody like Matt Walsh right now. This documentary is very respectful of trans communities, of everything. He's just trying to make a point of it's just about the children. Let children get to a point where they can make a decision. That's all we want to do. Because at a certain point,
why in a society right now do we have a push where we have to tell children? Tell children really kind of what they want to be, because children are very impressionable.
Yeah.
Right? Like my wife, listen, my wife will say, oh, my leg kind of hurts. My daughter's like, oh, my leg hurts.
Right.
So you're telling me that, children are not very impressionable. Right. And when you tell them, and when you see these parents say, well, I know you want to wear your dress today, or I know, it's like you're not really impressing on them to do certain things because they want to please their parents and they want to please society.
And you'll get, what's really interesting is in Canada has very strict laws that we were one vote away from passing recently, the Women's Health Bill. A lot of people don't realize what was in that bill. People really, the media really did not cover this. The only reason it didn't pass was because one Democrat, Joe Manchin, voted against it. It's the one reason we didn't get this passed. All Republicans and one Democrat. In this bill, we would have had the exact same laws as Canada has right now. In Canada, there are fathers. There's a father right now. They interview him in the movie, who is currently, he was in prison. He's on bail right now because in Canada they have a law very similar that says that if any child wants to transition or start hormone therapy and things, parents, it's up to the child. So his daughter at the time was 12. and started getting on like TikTok and all of these things.
Oh,
and
boy.
wanted to get, and felt welcomed into this community and was told this is what's good. And so she went and at a doctor appointment asked if they could start this, and his dad was like, whoa, time out. Wait a second. But the doctors then like took her aside separately and said, well, that's what you want to do. So
yeah, you don't need a parent's consent.
She was at a doctor's appointment with her mom separately or something, and he gets a call from the mom saying, hey, they're starting our daughter on hormone therapy like right now. He calls and is like, hey, you got to put a halt on this. Long story short, they didn't, and he is now in prison for not using the proper pronouns when talking to his daughter.
What?
Yeah. They have a list. This is what made
So
Jordan.
it's not like I was waiting for you to say like he ran into the doctor's office and maybe, some kind of... And no, he didn't even do it. So he's just not using the proper pronouns.
He's literally in jail right now.
Isn't this the same thing that happened with a school recently in America, though? We talked about this, didn't we? Where the kids did not use they got in trouble for being bullies because they didn't use the proper pronouns or something. There's
could
a story about that.
Yeah, it's
Well, here's the thing. This is not a moral argument we're making based on religious beliefs. This is based on scientific studies that proves that these hormone therapies are harmful, cause cancer, especially the surgeries, cause much higher rates of suicide after 7 years. There's also all the studies that have been done on, I think they call it gender dysmorphia, right? Have studied for a long time. It's not a new thing. They've done studies and studies, and the long-time study showed, I read this in 2016, that 94% of people who feel like they were born the wrong sex or wrong gender, 94% of them, by the time they turn 22, accept the fact or realize, no, I guess I was born with the right body. All right? That happens after the age of 22 to 94% of people who identify as I'm in the wrong body.
Wow.
So what we're doing to these kids now is, if Canada says, no, the kid can choose and do, we have no say in it as a parent, whatever. If that science study holds up, the long-term study, 94% of these children will turn 22 or sometimes in their 20s and have struggles with the fact that I've cut off my this or made changes to that, and now I don't know what to do. I can't reverse it.
Yeah. And I have friends. Keep in mind, I have friends who have undergone transition therapy.
And it's different if you're past 22.
And the thing was, they were adults.
You want to do it,
and they're happy with it.
They made a decision.
I'm fine. I don't care. I'm just talking
adults.
about children. That's the only thing that I'm worried about.
Well, and there's other things too. Is that when also the other side effect is that when you go through puberty, there are certain things your body does. There's changes, right? Bone density, other changes, and when you block that, then you could have also lifelong consequences, health consequences, because your body couldn't be properly, transitioned, right?
Right.
To adulthood. I mean, so there are a lot of questions. Do they have? Let me ask you this: in this documentary, does they have people that have that went through it and then said that they
there's a lot.
Regret?
They have a lot. They actually have it's a really strong. There's a guy who runs he was born a biological female. He's now a man. He points out all of the issues that happen. This other thing is that they don't tell these children all of the risks involved, the diseases, and like he only has a couple years to live because of all the massive infections.
Oh my gosh,
he gets. And that's another thing that they don't really tell you is that statistically, you have a ton more really bad internal staph infections because of a lot of the ways this works,
surgeries and
and the way it all ties together. So there's a lot in there. So I really recommend it. Just because it's kind of just
and that's
powerful.
Again, it's
watch.
Not anti-trans to say we want our children to be safe and healthy. I think if you're an adult and your brain has reached the age of maturation, which they know is like 25,
right? And
then you can understand, okay, these are the risks versus the benefits, and I want to go ahead with this decision. That absolutely, you're right, and I believe you should have the right. And
that's right.
and if it makes you happy, and if it what you want to do, then God, like literally, God bless you. Like, do it. But as a child, we know that their brains are not capable of thinking long term. They're not fully developed. And it's not even that they're allowed at this point. It's become to the point where, because of TikTok, it seems like they're being encouraged, to take these risks.
Does this documentary, kind of point that out? Because it's not really negative towards the community, right? It's just basically just letting them speak, and I mean,
I don't think it's negative at all towards the community. It's negative towards the doctors who are pushing this and the surgeries and the medicines on children.
Yes,
it's not negative towards the trans community at all. It's negative towards the, or it's not even negative. It's letting them speak in their own words
for themselves.
It's literally them speaking in their own words of what they believe about some of these things. In fact, he'll ask legitimate pediatricians, like, "Well, what do you say about the fact that this medicine is proven to harm or cause issues?" And they'll say, "We don't want to. If you keep on asking questions like that, we're going to have to end this interview." Like, they just refuse to answer. So it's one of those things where it's like they know the real studies.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're way over time. Yeah. This episode did not. It's super.
Was it supposed to be the light episode? We were promising a light.
It's not
episode.
A normal episode.
Next week we'll talk Stranger Things.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot of.
And
well, no, listen, guys. I mean, this was a deep episode. But I think there's a lot of good information, and I think it's getting to a time too where we need to really talk about some serious stuff, as well as we have fun here on the show, but there are serious topics here too to discuss. So anyway, thank you for joining us.
You take us out.
I have no idea how to. What's the end? I don't know what the end thing is.
I just make things up. Thank you, everybody, for go for it.
Oh, no. Hey, thanks for coming in. Remember, 5 stars is the correct number of stars, so please review the show. That helps us out. And until next week. Is that good?
Until next week, what do they do until next week?
Until next week? I don't know.
Keep it classy,
No,
Fresno.
Until next week, you know what? Go back and listen to some of our old episodes and listen to what we talked about and just what we said about in this book.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, pick up some of our old episodes and re-listen to them. You'll enjoy them.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Talk to you all soon.